Episode 2, Demystify Policies, Scoring, and Timing Strategies, we zoom out from domain content and look at how the exam is actually delivered, scored, and experienced minute by minute. Many capable professionals underestimate how much confidence comes from simply knowing the rules of the game and having a realistic plan for how to move through it. Here, the promise is straightforward. You will understand what the exam center expects from you, how your responses are turned into a score, and how to navigate the clock without feeling chased. When those pieces are clear, the exam changes from a foggy threat into a demanding but manageable task. That shift in perception alone does a great deal to reduce anxiety and sharpen your thinking. A sensible starting point is to decode the exam policies on identification, breaks, tools, and permitted behavior so there are no surprises on test day. Every provider publishes rules about acceptable identification, such as the type of government ID required, whether names must match exactly, and how expired documents are treated. There are also clear expectations about breaks, including whether breaks are scheduled or unscheduled, what happens to the exam clock when you step away, and what you may access during that time. Tool policies define whether you receive a physical whiteboard, scratch paper, an on-screen noteboard, or no jotting space at all, and they also govern the handling of calculators or reference sheets where applicable. When you take time beforehand to read, understand, and visualize yourself following these rules, you free up mental capacity on exam day to focus on the questions instead of logistics. From there, it is important to understand how scoring works, including scaled scores and the impact of domain weighting, because that shapes a rational mindset about performance. Most advanced certifications do not report your raw number of correct answers directly. They convert performance into a scaled score that normalizes difficulty across different forms of the exam. This means that two people can answer different sets of questions but still be judged against the same passing standard. Domain weighting continues to matter at scoring time because missed questions in a heavily weighted domain affect your overall scaled result more than misses in lighter domains. When you grasp this structure, you move from the vague feeling that everything counts equally to a more accurate sense of where precision matters most. Once the scoring model is clear, you can calibrate your passing threshold mindset using evidence rather than hopeful guesses or horror stories. The published passing scaled score, along with sample performance profiles and any available domain feedback descriptions, provides real clues about what good enough looks like. Instead of telling yourself you must be perfect, or fearing that one tough block of questions has ruined your chances, you can remind yourself that the exam is designed to tolerate a reasonable number of misses. You also understand that a strong showing in major domains can offset a few weaker areas, as long as you avoid catastrophic gaps. This evidence-based mindset keeps your emotional response in check when you encounter difficult items, helping you stay engaged rather than spiraling into self-doubt. With that mental framing in place, the next practical step is to build a timing plan that allocates minutes per question and incorporates room for flagging decisions. You start with the total exam time and the number of questions, then divide to understand your average time budget per item, often somewhere between 1.5 and 2 minutes. That average is a guide, not a rigid rule, but it helps you notice when you are spending an unusually long time on a single scenario. Your timing plan might include small internal checkpoints, such as where you aim to be after every 30 or 40 questions, so you can verify you are on pace. When this plan is committed to memory, the exam clock becomes a reference instrument rather than a source of panic. A timing plan becomes truly effective when you pair it with a deliberate two-pass method that harvests points before you dive into the hardest material. On the first pass, you answer questions that are straightforward or where a clear best choice emerges quickly, perhaps after a brief reread and elimination of obviously wrong options. When a question is long, confusing, or requires heavier reasoning, you make a quick judgment about whether to decide now or flag it and move on, keeping an eye on your per-question time budget. The purpose of this first sweep is to secure as many likely correct answers as possible while your mind is fresh and the clock is comfortable. The second pass then becomes a focused effort on a smaller set of challenging items, approached with the knowledge that a substantial portion of the exam is already in good shape. Within that two-pass structure, educated elimination is one of your most powerful tools for reducing uncertainty and increasing your odds responsibly. Instead of thinking in terms of, "I know it," or "I have no idea," you work to identify options that conflict with core principles, violate the scenario's constraints, or introduce unrealistic absolutes. Removing even one or two implausible choices changes a four-option guess from a random attempt into a more informed selection. Good elimination uses your understanding of secure lifecycle practices, risk management, and governance to test each option against what a competent professional would actually do. Over time, this habit trains you to see patterns of weak distractors and to trust your professional judgment even when the exact textbook phrase is not present in your memory. Related to elimination is the skill of recognizing common trick patterns, absolutes, and distractor phrasing that appear under pressure. Trick patterns may include answer choices that focus on a technical detail while ignoring explicit business requirements stated in the STEM, or options that jump straight to implementation before dealing with policy or risk analysis. Absolute words like always, never, or all are not automatically wrong, but they should prompt extra scrutiny because real-world security decisions rarely exist in such rigid form. Some distractors sound appealing because they mirror familiar buzzwords or popular frameworks, yet they do not actually address the question being asked. Training your eye to notice these patterns helps you slow down just enough on critical questions to avoid being pulled toward answers that feel comfortable but are logically inconsistent. Even with strong analytical habits, a multi-hour exam will test your concentration, which is why mindfulness micro-resets are a practical technique rather than a vague wellness suggestion. A micro-reset might be as simple as closing your eyes for one deep breath, relaxing your shoulders, and purposely shifting your attention from the last question to the next one. You can silently name what just happened, such as, "That was a hard scenario, but it is finished," and then intentionally bring your focus to the new STEM in front of you. These resets can also be tied to small rituals, like adjusting your posture or lightly stretching your fingers away from the mouse. When used periodically, they prevent mental fatigue from accumulating unnoticed and give you a way to recover composure after a particularly draining item. Decision rules around whether to skip, flag, or answer now become the backbone of your behavior under time pressure. Instead of improvising in the moment, you define criteria such as, if I have read the question twice and still cannot narrow it to two options within my time budget, I will make a provisional best guess, flag it, and move on. Conversely, if you can narrow options down to two and feel a clear lean toward one, your rule might be to commit and avoid a revisiting loop unless there is time at the end. Having these rules written down and practiced in advance reduces the cognitive load of constant mini-negotiations with yourself during the exam. Over several dozen questions, that saved energy translates into more stable reasoning and fewer rushed mistakes in the final stretch. To make those rules feel natural, it helps to simulate pacing through short sprints that internalize a comfortable exam rhythm. A sprint might involve answering 10 or 15 practice questions under a strict, realistic time limit, using the same skip, flag, and answer behavior you plan to use on the real exam. After each sprint, you can reflect briefly on whether you stayed within your desired average time, how often you felt rushed, and whether your decision rules held up under pressure. These sessions are not only about getting questions right, they are about training your internal sense of how long a careful but efficient reading actually takes. Over time, your body and mind learn what a sustainable tempo feels like, so the real exam feels like an extension of familiar practice rather than a completely new experience. No discussion of exam strategy is complete without logistics, because small practical issues can quietly erode your performance if left unmanaged. Planning for adequate sleep in the days leading up to the exam, rather than only the night before, helps stabilize attention and mood. Thinking through nutrition, including when you will eat, what you will avoid, and how you will handle caffeine, reduces the odds of either sluggishness or jitters halfway through the session. Travel buffers matter as well, such as leaving extra time for traffic, parking, and check-in procedures so that you are not arriving flustered. A simple identification checklist, verified a day or two in advance, prevents last-minute scrambles to find documents or realize that a card has expired. By the time you have worked through these elements, a short mini-review helps tie them together. Policies known, scoring grasped, timing rehearsed, confidence rising. You can restate, in your own words, what the exam center expects from you and what you intend to do in return across identification, breaks, tools, and behavior. You can summarize how scaled scoring and domain weighting interact, and how that understanding shapes your focus on major areas without neglecting minor ones. You can describe your timing plan, your two-pass method, and the role of elimination, micro-resets, and decision rules in keeping you balanced throughout the exam window. Saying these pieces aloud makes them feel less like theories and more like commitments you are ready to act on. The conclusion for Episode 2 is intentionally practical. You now have the ingredients to finalize a pacing template that fits both the exam structure and your working style. That template combines your minutes per question average, your checkpoint targets, your two-pass approach, and your rules for handling difficult items. The next action is to rehearse this pattern in a focused practice block, using real or high-quality sample questions in timed conditions so that your plan is tested and adjusted before test day. Each rehearsal tightens the connection between your strategy and your actual behavior under constraints. When exam day arrives, you will not be inventing a way of working. You will be stepping into a routine you have already lived through and refined. Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit DailyCyber.News.